Hi and welcome to another episode of Straight Out of Camera, proudly sponsored by Fujifilm South Africa. Joining me live in studio today is Managing Director of techsmart.co.za, Mike Hubert. Mike, how are you doing?
Hi, Esli. All well. How are you?
Very well. And live in Cape Town, commercial photographer Leon Oosthuizen. What's up, Leon?
Everything is up, Esli. It's looking amazing. Lucky to be chatting with you guys.
Tell me a little bit about this project that is just airing on television at this moment called Die Scatties.
Die Scatties. For the English people out there, it's called, it shouldn't read Die Scatties. It's an Afrikaans term for like lovely or sweetie pie or something like that. And what it is, it's a pin-up style makeover show with a bit of a twist. It's not taking somebody from a desperate position and giving them some product and a glass eye and new teeth. It's seeing the beauty in somebody and bringing that out so that they are able to see themselves in a different light. Obviously it's in a studio environment. And then we take them through this journey of showing them what we see in them, and it's a journey that the viewers are able to join in on as well. It's a really uplifting program, I think.
Awesome. So, Mike, today we are discussing the art of conceptual photography, being able to sit at your office or studio and create this concept out of nothing but probably just an experience or an emotion. Then starting to process and build props, creating a set, and finally having the product or the image that you envisioned originally. It must be such a satisfying and rewarding experience.
I think building anything from scratch and coming up with a concept, working through the concept, kind of like ironing out all the difficult parts is very satisfying. And I think the final product is perhaps the thing you work towards. I think specifically with our guest a little bit later, Graham McCowan. He'll take us through the whole process, shows us what needs to be done.
Leon, with us being bombarded with visuals continuously during the day, either through television or social media, how difficult is it for photographers to be creative and not just imitate what is already been created?
It's a good question, Isli, because everybody that picks up a camera thinks that they're so creative until they realize they've actually done something somebody else has already created. So there are very few new things, but they are the people that dare to be real with themselves, I think. Those are the guys that are producing interesting work. The people that put things together because that's what they want to do. They haven't actually looked at too many other people trying to imitate. It's just a background like a language, and eventually you make your own poetry. That's where creativity really becomes powerful.
I think also, if you look at Instagram, there's so many tropes out there that, you go and photograph that thing and it becomes that type of style. But at least conceptual photography seems to be, it gives you a little bit more leeway. You can play around a bit more, especially when it comes to concept. It's really about the idea. It's about the concept. So.
Yes, the execution is part of that key. Is like how you put different components together to be able to convey the idea, the concept that you played with in the first part. The photograph is just the final expression of this whole drive. And if you have a series of images and you develop a style, or you're busy working on an exhibition of one story with multiple. Almost want to say multiple characters in it being different photographs. That's when a concept gets a lot of momentum. And I think guys that I look at for that kind of stuff is I don't know if you saw the Annie Leibovitz Disney series of fantastical images that she basically reimagined. And there's guys like Benjamin Van Wong who's doing a lot of stuff for like environmental exposure. He plays around with like amazing concepts and puts stuff together in fantastical ways that he's really inspirational on a very different level. It's stuff you haven't seen before. I think that's the kind of stories that I like looking at.
Does he work with animals?
Benjamin actually doesn't look like he's working with animals too much. It's a lot of time it's models in very fantastical locations or known locations that he gives a new spin on. I'm thinking specifically of an underwater series that I see that he did. It was about saving water and being in tune with what water means to our planet, because we have less and less of it as a resource. and as a city of Cape Town, actually. And then there's a whole bunch of recycling stuff that went along with it, where people were posed in bottles and empty plastic bottles to make it a completely different stage environment. He plays, and that's evident in the way that he does his concepts, and that's very invigorating.
You're listening to brandlive.co.za.
Have you ever thought about the power of social media? Social media has the power to make your business grow. Grow! Yeah. Why don't you let us manage your social media? Because our business is to see your business grow. Visit us at www.bstownmedia.co.za.
So joining us in the studio today is Graham McCowan, pixel warrior, videographer, and also conceptual photographer. Graham, welcome to the studio.
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Cool. Listen, tell us a little bit about, if people don't know about conceptual photography, what is it all about?
Well, I suppose maybe the best way to say it is that it's pretty much photography that has an idea. It is something that's driven by an idea, which I think is maybe not something that South African photographers are necessarily too worried about. I think we seem to be a nation that's focused on gear and just getting out there and just snapping a whole bunch of shots and doing nothing with the pictures. It is, I suppose, an art, if you want to see it that way. It's probably the closest version of photography that goes to art. And because of that, it becomes a highly individual thing, where before, maybe if you're doing fashion or glamour or portraiture or editorial for magazine, there is a part to play when it comes to the models and the people that you are shooting. But in all seriousness here, it really is down to the models pulling off a character that you thought up on a set that you created, on an idea that you've come up with a story that you are telling. It really does become a very individual, personal thing.
Talk to us about your sort of experience in the industry. I know you didn't predominantly start off as a photographer. You studied cinematography or film.
Actually, I studied as graphic design, but was actually in advertising college. I suppose that's where maybe the concepts began. And then from the very first days of interning, I started doing video editing and doing motion graphics and things like that. Bounced backwards and forwards from here to do a little bit of print work, and then went back to the interactive stuff, the multimedia stuff. Then worked in the UK for a while, and then just got into video a lot more than all of that. I suppose that's where the storytelling side comes from, is the film side.
And obviously, the design background has made it really easy for you to get all your handles in Photoshop to be able to do this fantastical conceptual work that you are doing.
It's one of those things where, you'll notice a photographer really connects with the lens, or he connects with the camera, or he connects with whatever. Me and Photoshop got on from the very first moment. It was brilliant. And designing, in my college, it was the first year where they made you decide if you wanted to do multimedia or graphic design. And I actually just decided to stay with the design side, which I'm actually grateful for. I think the design thing is really huge, to have that graphic design that goes through everything, and your compositions and understanding typography and whatever else. It was actually it's a really good base to have, and designing in Photoshop is in absolutely everything that I do.
I think with the conceptual photography, it's definitely the case. You need something else. You can't just come from a photographic background, especially if you look at, for example, the guy that did the Pink Floyd album covers, the photo shoots for that one, Storm Thorgensen, and then also guy that does Nine Inch Nails art direction, Rob Sheridan. So it does seem like if you want that kind of concept, like the album cover or the really interesting, thought-provoking photo, that you do need something else than just pure photography skills.
Well, not to deter the guys who don't know too much about design. It's a thing to definitely get into, but don't be afraid of coming at it from wherever you've come from. That's what makes you different. So don't be deterred if you haven't done a graphic design college. I'm not too sure how great that was. I think mom and dad buying me a computer at home and me sitting there and pounding away at the machine, I think that's what really did it. I don't know if the college was really that great.
Mike, I really like that idea, by the way, that you mentioned, that there has to be something else that grabs people's attention, something different, something not too photojournalistic in a way. It's like the opposite end of the photographic spectrum, but it doesn't necessarily have to be the Photoshop thing. I'm thinking of Alice in Wonderland underwater shoot by a lady called Elena Callis, I think. And Elena Callis. And she, it's just straightforward photography, but the way that she shot her daughter in a swimming pool with a bunch of different props in various like floating states and stuff, it brought an ethereal and a like otherworldliness to the whole idea. So the concept was strong, but it was straightforward photography, and I think there's a spectrum for it because the concept is always the main story, and that's what I dig about your work, Graham, is that the story is never sort of like playing second fiddle to the Photoshop technique or everything else. You are always like pulled into your amazing photographs, and I appreciate that about your work. How do you focus? And I mean, obviously that's all design stuff, but what are your like tips and tricks and techniques of how you actually get people's eyes to go to the story instead of just get fixated on Photoshop techniques?
Yeah, there again, it's another problem, I suppose. I mean, the guys are all about, if you go through to expos and stuff, all the guys are always talking about gear and this lighting and that thing and how to do this, and you end up being a mini-me of that person that's talking. Concept photography, you can throw out all the other workshops that you've gone to, where maybe if you did the fashion stuff or editorial or even glamour, they, will obviously get you to light the model correctly so you're evenly through the body, etc., etc. But in concept photography, you may not want to do that. You may want to just light the girl's hand. She's in the darkness or even silhouetted against the background because she's got something in her hand. That's where the story is. That, of course, as far as the other photography genres seem to go, is a bit of a no-no. So here it's kind of open-ended. It's, you can literally do almost anything, which is great. At the same time, it's daunting. For me, I think, maybe this is even something that Hollywood has gone and forgotten, is that it really is a good basis of actually having a good idea. You can do an execution to anything, but if you're going to do execution of a bad idea, it's always going to be bad. You need to do a good execution of a good idea in order to make it good. So I think it's always an idea of having that idea, and it can be literally anything. You can either tell a story, or it can be a visual concept. It can be bouncing backwards and forwards. I mean, you could literally do anything.
Talk to us about a recent project that you've done where you sort of had this thinking process, you got the image in your head, and how that developed into the final image.
Well, I think that was obviously our promo shoot for our up-and-coming sort of workshop challenge, where literally I came up with a whole bunch of concepts, and then it was actually you, Isley, who said to me, well, we need to do a promo shoot for this. And I thought, well, that's interesting, okay. And then I sort of chose between all the sort of ideas that I came up with, and I sort of settled on doing a visual idea just because it pushed me into a different area than before. And obviously it was a bit easier to do a video on a visual concept than trying to do this hectic story.
Okay, and that visual idea, I mean, the video is out now, so people can go and view it. That final image, how did you get to it? How did you think it through? And how did you process it and get into the final image?
Well, obviously the challenge itself was to link photographs together in the most interesting way, which is something I've never done before, literally having photographs and having something that visually linked it across it. I actually had a very literal visual linking mechanic where actually she had the phone, we had a C-stand over her head with a clamp so it could actually hold onto the handset, and then we reshot the other side where it was the phone coming in from the side, so she's twisted, etc., etc. I think it was just an idea that I had in my head. Obviously, I really love vintage stuff, and I just built things around that, took things from home, etc., etc. I don't think you have to think through the sets too much. I think you can very easily take what you've got and use that. I don't think you need to go and spend a lot of money doing set stuff and whatever else. You can literally put things together that makes it look interesting. And then obviously we shot in your garage, which is actually pretty awesome. That undercover garage space is awesome.
In terms of the treatment or the preparation actually before a shoot, obviously you have you have a picture in your mind. How much of that is pre-planned, and then you just go for the jugular when the lights are on, you've got your camera in your hand, or is there a process that develops while you shoot and you explore the concept a bit further as you shoot?
The thing with me is that the worst part of the process for me, the part I like the least, is the shoot. I actually don't really like that because obviously there's a lot of things that have to be done. A lot of, I have to set up the set, and generally I'm sort of doing it alone. I don't have any sort of assistance and whatever else. Sometimes I really have to just do this. There's no clients to really pay for this kind of thing, so I don't have any assistance seconds to do it, and then I'm knackered by the time it's all set up, and then I have to try and get the shot. For me, coming through, I really am one of these guys that doesn't seem to do very well when I improv shoot. I don't know why. I'm ridiculously bad at that. If I have an idea in my head and I will go out to cash converters or charity shops to try and find elements that are relatively cheap, obviously I need to be able to move it in my car, so everything kind of follows that theme. So it's not huge stuff. It's stuff that I can always pack into my car. And if I go and I shoot those shots, they seem to be really great. I will then improv a shot and it just doesn't look that good.
You mentioned that this isn't perhaps the most, what do you say, it's not necessary that clients will pay for this. Why do you find that corporate clients won't go for this type of shoots?
Marketers are always, they're always going to stay to whatever they've done before. I think this idea actually scares the marketers a lot because you'd need to be heavily inside the whole art thing to think up these concepts and stuff. I just don't see marketers really doing that. I think it's very much copying stuff that they've done before. And we definitely are a nation where, if I do a shoot, the models always ask me for sample pictures. That just seems to be the culture here, which is kind of weird. If I'm not copying somebody, then they're not willing to be a part of the shoot almost. There's no, I don't know really what that is. I've tried to think it through. I don't really understand. I just don't see the corporate marketers coming to me and saying, "Oh, we don't know what we want to do." No, I think they're worried about their jobs, and I think it's a very safe thing to follow what has been done before. And yeah, no, I don't think they'll ever get me to do this kind of thing. I just don't see.
So is this all your conceptual stuff? Obviously, you do commercial work as well, but your conceptual work, is that just all self-indulgent? This is your guilty pleasures or kind of thing that you're kind of addicted to and can't not do?
I think, when you're an artist, you need to really do the art that you do, not because necessarily you're being paid or not that people are even watching you. I think you need to satisfy that side of yourself. And this is, for me, definitely that, where I really enjoy this kind of thing. Obviously, coming from more of a film side, this is why I like the sets and the props and the storytelling and the characters and the outfits and, all that kind of stuff. And I don't really think that a corporate client's ever going to pay me to do this. So if I don't do it for myself, it's probably never going to happen. But I really do enjoy doing it. And I think as an artist, you need to do the things that you really love.
No, I can absolutely agree with that. But the best art is a minimum 51% self-indulgent.
Indeed.
Conceptual photography tend to lean towards sometimes the dark side of things. Do you agree or not really?
I think the easiest thing to do sometimes is to go dark. I think I did it as well. If you take a look at my early music videos, I also went to a dark place. I think it's a place that people go first. I think dark is intriguing to people. It's just not very inspiring. So I actually got rid of the whole dark thing. You may see elements of dark here and there on certain pictures that I've taken, but I don't really focus on that too much anymore. I try to be as intriguing, but not be dark. But I mean, keep in mind, Hollywood was built on horror from Hitchcock downwards.
When you talk about moving away from dark, how did that transition work for you in terms of your storyline? Because obviously it's a major gear shift. The dark stuff is oftentimes soul searching and self-exploratory and how did you? I mean, was that a reflection of where you were as a person, or was it just something that you decided as an exterior thing? You don't want to be portraying too much of the darkness. You'd rather go something bright and light.
I don't know. When people go dark, I don't know if it's necessarily because they really are a dark kind of person. I think a lot of people are hurting or, whatever. Everybody's got a sob story to tell. So this is maybe a way for them to get it across. I think for me, it was just a conscious decision. I just decided one day, I think a lot of people were sort of, calling me this very dark kind of guy. And I don't know if I really like that. I think I just made the conscious decision to try and be not so dark and just see if I can be as intriguing by doing stuff that just wasn't as dark. And it's a lot harder to do, I'm not going to lie. If you're doing the dark thing, it is an easy way to go. And it's probably a way to start maybe, but it's just not inspiring. Nobody's going to be inspired by that.
So, Graham, we're going to do something we've never done on Straight Out of Camera. We are going to show you 3 of your images, and we just want you to explain to our listeners. Listeners, you can watch this on YouTube and see the exact images. We just want you to explain the thinking process and how you executed it and what you wanted to portray out of this image.
Okay, so obviously here some concepts will have an actual story behind it, an actual message behind it. Sometimes it's just a visual idea to get people that are interested. This one, I decided I wanted to attack the idea of sexism and the 1950s housewife thing. I mean, it's some of the most fascinating advertising, how to measure your wife for the right ironing board. I mean, that's epic advertising. At the same time, it's horrendous. And for me, I think a lot of messages can be really hot and heavy, where, especially in the films that I've written, what I always like to do is to talk about real people going through real situations, but do it with a fictional mechanic, so you make it more interesting and it's not so, everybody wants to literally slit their wrists afterwards. And here, what I decided to do was just play around with different things. It was really great that Hollywood Costumes had all this available props and stuff for me to put together. And literally, that's just how it came together. I just literally threw this stuff around. It was a really amazing sort of outfit. I threw some, very dark elements in there when it maybe comes to the knife and maybe the mannequin heads in the trolley, etc., etc. And then I threw some comedy in there, which is the payoff line. I don't think anybody can read on Facebook because it's a bit small, which actually says, "Your dinner is not the only thing she's burning tonight." Which I just thought was funny. So you can throw that sort of comedy in there, and obviously I did the overall wide shot, which is what I wanted, and then I did the sort of close-up shot. But I pretty much knew what it is that I wanted to do. I knew what set pieces were available at Hollywood Costumes. This one I actually did there, where now I actually start making my own set pieces, etc., etc. And I just had this idea in my head of just trying to be a little bit more weird, but just not so hot and heavy. And actually, it was a good shot. Actually, Kadena was actually sick that day, so it was really awesome that she came through.
And this image?
This one was actually taken again at Hollywood Costumes in their studio. And I decided that actually this one didn't really have a message, kind of like the anti-retro housewife did. What I really wanted to do was have this, which actually became a cinematograph in the end. Well, actually, it was always going to be a cinematograph. What I wanted to do is I wanted to have this sort of smoke and this weird kind of Mary Poppins vibe happening. So the set is actually built very linear, so it looks very vintage-ish. Maybe back in the days when sort of photography started going and they weren't taking the cameras out too much. They were very fragile, and photography hadn't found its thing yet, and they were making these very flat, sort of very linear sets. I was, as I said, I really love the vintage thing, so I just went and did that, and I thought the outfits were really great, and I just thought it was a very interesting shot. What was great about this is you got to learn to compromise, especially if you do film. The studio was so cold. Benisa was actually sick after this, and the smoke just didn't do what it is that I wanted it to do. I wanted it to be kind of thicker and kind of bellow a little bit more. And what happened is that the studio was so cold, the smoke stayed at eye level. It just sort of drifted there, and then eventually we had to stop filming because it was just this layer of zombie mist, going across the studio.
And the final image?
Well, this one was actually a set that I made for the Super Sunday Fujifilm talk that we did at Photo ZA. And I always wanted to do one of these sort of monotone kind of set where it's all the same color, etc., etc. And what I told the photographers to do at this talk was to sell the idea of schizophrenia, or that identity disorder, when you have a split personality, how to get two different energies into one picture, especially when it's all white. And as a bit of a spoiler alert, I said to the audience, what I would do personally is I would fight for the shadows. So if everything is white, you fight for the shadows, which gives you the black tones, and obviously those are two different energies in one picture. What was interesting about it is, when I took this picture, which was later on, I didn't shoot at the actual event for Super Sunday, I brought in a model, and I decided to do this black paint across her face, which in the beginning I thought, maybe it would look like a man's beard, but it didn't really bother me too much. And then I sort of did it, and as I took the first strike, I realized actually this is very much like a beard. And I thought to myself, well, no, this is what I've planned, this is what's in my head, I'm going to stay with it. And when I finally did it, and I finally did the final shots, it actually really does look like a guy's beard. And then later on, when I was looking at the picture, I realized just how epic that really was. When you're talking about two different energies, there is nothing more different than a man and a woman. It was great to be so connected with the set. I had to spray paint everything. It took me days to collect the stuff from cash converters, spray it all down. I think went through eight spray cans just to spray that stuff down. And to be so connected with the set like that, the ideas that I was thinking up with were going even further than maybe what I was planned. And that's what's really good about actually making my own sets, etc., etc. The story went deeper than I thought.
How much time did you spend in Photoshop for that one?
I think because obviously I needed to build the environment. I actually shot that in my living room, so it doesn't look like that. So I must have spent about 2 days of doing that in Photoshop. But I knew what I wanted. There was no playing around. I went straight for what I wanted.
Graham, I understand you have conceptual workshop coming up. Can you maybe just tell our listeners a bit more about what they could expect and when and where and how much it's going to be?
So the workshops that I do, I mean, let's be honest, you can't really do a workshop for conceptual photography. I mean, I think this is coming down to somebody would have to shadow a person like myself maybe for some time on how it is that I come up with an image in my head, and then I go and I buy all the pieces to build the sets, and if I paint them down or I correct things or, et cetera, et cetera, you'd have to spend a long time. It's not really something that you can go through and watch some photographer sort of set up lights, etc., etc. It really is an involved thing. And there again, I don't know if you really would want to do that. That's kind of like Picasso doing an Andy Warhol workshop. I mean, it's kind of crazy. You want to have your own take on this, and the best thing to do is just to go and do your own thing. So I don't know if it's best on this to really go and follow a person like myself to go and learn how to do it. You need your own step on this. But the very first time I did my first photo day, I did a talk up front about how photography is more about the person behind it. And when it comes to concept photography, it really is entirely about the person behind it. And when you think up different ideas, or if you put a story to a person, what happens is your photography automatically changes. Obviously, I was showing them videos and things like that, etc., etc. And when the photographers shot, I think it kind of went back to just sort of shooting things as you normally would. And the photographs were really amazing, but maybe wasn't trying to get guys to be a little as different as I wanted them to be. I mean, still them, but in their style, but be different. So this time I decided what I would do is I would actually give them a story. I would give them a challenge to actually do to make them different, very much like how I gave myself the challenge to do the visual link. I've never done that before, and I think that that's actually a very different photograph for myself. So it was very good to actually go and do the promo shoot just to see if the ideas were working or not. And that's the idea. Photographers come through, they roll a dice, they're given their challenge, and they execute this idea across these 4 sets. And it will pretty much take all day, and it's a great way to socialize. I think we had a great energy on our first photo day, and hopefully the photographers are really shooting different at the end of the day and getting something out of it that shows them just to, pay attention to the bits and pieces and what tells a story and what doesn't, and et cetera, et cetera. The cost is originally was 5,200. Fujifilm have come in to subsidize 50% of that, so it's 2,590 at the moment, so 2,590. And it is on the 18th of November in Woodmead. So if anybody's actually around, it'd be awesome for you to come through and spend the day with us.
And limited space, just a couple.
Limited space, yeah.
Very cool. This sounds really exciting, and maybe I should book a ticket to come up.
And indeed. It'd be awesome to have you there, actually.
Awesome. Follow us on SOOC_live on Facebook and on Instagram, where you'll see examples of Graham's work. So, Graham, where can we find you on social media and on the internet?
So on Facebook, I'm under Pixel Warrior Motion Film Pictures, and Instagram, I am under Pixel Warrior Motion Pictures, and obviously pixelwarrior.co.za.
Awesome. Thank you very much for joining us in studio. Mike and Leon, where can we find you?
So you can read about all the latest technology at techsmart.co.za, and then my photos on Instagram at Fark1.
And I'm leonslens.com, Leon Oosthuizen on Instagram. And if you have DSTV with channel VIA somewhere, join us for Discutties on Catch Up or on Wednesday afternoons at 5:30.
Awesome. Don't forget the workshop on the 18th of November with Pixel Warrior. You do not want to miss out. Limited space, as well as a 50% sponsorship from Fujifilm South Africa. Thank you, gentlemen. Have a great day.
Thanks so much, guys.
Cheers.
Cheers, guys.
rnlive.co.za.